So, happy Star Wars Day.
Is it really? Or did you making that up?
I'm not making it up
Okay.
because it's May the 4th. Be with you.
Oh, okay.
Happy I am to be here, as Yoda would say. So, my talk title today is, Are You Feeling Lucky? And I have a little story. It's about a 92-year-old, very petite, well-poised, and proud lady. She fully dressed each morning by 8 o'clock, and her hair was just fashionably done, and her makeup was perfectly applied. I'm thinking of Maureen because she just always looks so beautiful when she comes, but she's not 92. She wouldn't like that. All right, so, but just, just all together. And, she was going legally blind, but she was going to be moving into an assisted living care home. Her husband of 70 years had recently passed away, and this is what made the move necessary. So she had to make this change. And after waiting very patiently in the lobby of the nursing home, she smiled sweetly when she was told that her room was ready. As she maneuvered her walker to the elevator, an aide provided her a visual description of her room, including the eyelet sheets that had been hung in her window. "Oh, I just love it," she stated with enthusiasm of an 8-year-old having just been presented with a puppy. "Mrs. Joan, you haven't even seen the room. Just wait," the aide said. "Oh, that doesn't have anything to do with it," she replied. "Happiness is something you decide on ahead of time. Whether I like my room or not doesn't depend on how the furniture is arranged. It's how I arrange my mind. And I've already decided to love it. I make decisions like that every morning when I wake up. I have a choice. I can spend the day in bed recounting the difficulty I've had with the parts of my body that no longer work. Or I can get out of bed and be thankful for the ones that still do. Each day is a gift, and as long as my eyes open, I'll focus on the new day and all the happy memories I've stored away, just in time, for this time in my life." It sounds like our friend Mrs. Jones was familiar with the passage from the Science of Mind textbook, which reads, "Our thoughts should tend more and more towards the affirmative attitude of mind that is positive, stable, and above all else, toward a real unity with spirit that is already complete and perfect." During the month of May and this morning, we're going to focus on our attitude and whether it's toward a real unity with spirit that is already perfect and complete. One of the things I love about religious science is how practical it is and how we can truly apply it every day in our lives. It teaches us how to live today in harmony with the universal good. What is important to remember is that the spiritual alignment is more important than the physical manifestation. Sometimes it's hard to remember that. In fact, the physical manifestation, this is important, is the byproduct of spiritual alignment. Remember the passage in the Bible that says, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all else will be added unto you." So it's hard to remember that sometimes, but if we keep our focus on that, everything else is added. At the same time, because we live in this world of form, having a sufficiency of form, material goods, is preferable, right? It is good to have what it is we need to make our lives comfortable. Today's exploration of the power of our attitudinal alignment toward a real unity with spirit that is already complete and perfect comes from the form of the results of a 1994 research project that was done in England by a Dr. Richard Wiseman. He wanted to see if people who considered themselves lucky had any common traits. So all those people out there who consider themselves lucky, did they have common traits? And based on his research, he published a book called The Luck Factor. Has anybody read that? Okay. Rich is going,
The Luck Factor.
Why haven't I read that? Rich is thinking, how come I haven't read that? It'll be on his list. His subjects were instructed to flip through a newspaper that had photographs in it and to count the number of photographs. Luck, of course, was never mentioned. The subjects just thought that this was some silly research project that the psychology department of their university had thrown together. After about 3 pages, there was a half-page ad that said, "Stop counting. There are 43 photographs in this newspaper." This ad was right next to a photo. A few pages later, there was another large ad that said, "Stop counting. Tell the experimenter you've seen this and win 150 pounds," which was about $235 in United States money. The majority of the subjects who, through a cleverly disguised questionnaire, had previously labeled themselves lucky, stopped at the first ad and said to the research assistant, "There are 43 photographs in here. That's what it says. Do you want me to bother counting?" And they were told, "Yes, carry on." When they got to the second ad, it was, "Do I get my 150 pounds now?" I love this. The majority of those who had labeled themselves unlucky just flipped past these ads and continued counting the pictures. Based on his research, Dr. Wiseman identified 4 attitudes that are common to lucky people. And when he says lucky, they're in quotation marks. And they're not going to surprise you, I'm sure. Number 1, lucky people maximize their opportunities. Number 2, lucky people listen to their lucky hunches. Lucky people, this is number 3, lucky people expect good luck. And 4, finally, lucky people turn bad luck into good. Now, in religious science, we believe that nothing happens by chance or luck. In fact, my acronym for luck is laboring under correct knowledge. Ernest Holmes says, "We are not depending upon chance, but upon the law." Or, "We are living in an intelligent universe which responds to our mental states. To the extent that we learn to control these mental states, we shall automatically control our environment." What Dr. Wiseman refers to as lucky people are merely those who are aligned with Source, whether they're aware of it or not. See, this law works. It rains on the just and the unjust alike. This law works for everyone. Even if you don't believe it's working. What he refers to as good luck is simply the automatic workings of the law based on the consciousness of the individuals. So let's look at the spiritual implications of each of these attitudes. Number 1, lucky people maximize their opportunities. You're all familiar with Jesus' miracle of feeding 5,000 men plus women and children with just a few fishes and loaves of bread. Well, let's think about that for a moment. Jesus did not create enough food to feed those people out of thin air. The abundant supply did not appear from nothingness. Rather, the food which fed the crowd was an expansion of the existing supply, 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Granted, not much, but something. Polly had an interesting theory. Her theory on this was that everyone was in such a generous and giving mood that when the food was passed, they just passed it to the next person. "No, you take it." And it just continued on. And everyone felt fulfilled by the generosity of, that was her theory. I thought, oh, that's an interesting theory too. So this basic universal law applies when we're talking about, let me go back to people who consider themselves lucky, according to Dr. Wiseman, also see the supply that exists as a wonderful beginning, and then they make the most of it. Basic universal law applies. Form follows consciousness. Like attracts like. If you focus your attention on making the most of what you have, your consciousness attracts more. Jesus used the parable of the talents to illustrate this universal law. In it, a wealthy man goes away on a long trip and he leaves money to the care of his 3 servants. He gives the first servant 5 talents, the second servant 2 talents, and the third servant 1 talent. And when he returns after a long absence, he asks the servants to show him what they've done with his money, how they've handled the stewardship of his resources. The first 2 servants tell the master that they had faith in their charge. They kept their money in circulation, investing it wisely. They maximized the money's potential, and in doing so, they doubled it. Upon hearing this, the master was very well pleased and tells the 2 servants, "You have believed in a few things. I will make you master over many things." In essence, he's telling him, "You've proven to me that you make the best use of what you've been given. Therefore, you can obviously be trusted with more." By contrast, the last servant failed the test. He was only given a single talent to begin with. When the master asked him what he'd done with it, he said, "I was afraid, and I hid the talent in the earth." The servant acted out of fear. As a result, he saw only lack and failed to see the 1 talent's true potential. Hidden away in the earth, the talent failed to expand and multiply. The master, seeing that the servant is not a reliable steward, takes even the single talent away, and he's left with nothing. So rejoice in the resources that you have at hand. Gain every possible bit of use from them, and watch your luck change. Number 2, lucky people listen to their lucky hunches. Translated into spiritual terms, that says, trust your intuition. Interesting to look at how the dictionary defines intuition. The power of knowing without influence or reasoning, innate or instinctive knowledge. Wow. It's the direct opposite of the word tuition, which I always thought send more money. That's what that meant. But it means tuition, which is the process of learning through instruction. I learned something there. So, okay. Listen to these examples of innate or instinctive knowledge. Once a year at mating time, the male brush turkey in Australia gathers piles of brush and leaves, and he and his mate build a mound together on the ground. This mound becomes the nest for the eggs. The female lays her eggs in the nest and sits on them. It's the male's job to keep the nest at a certain temperature by adding and removing leaves every single day. You see, the eggs will only hatch if the temperature in the nest remains constant. So during the day, when the sun is high, he removes leaves from the nest. In the evening, as the night falls and the temperature drops, he adds leaves. Scientists have studied these birds and found that the temperature in those nests never varies by more than 1 degree. How does the male brush turkey know how to regulate the temperature so precisely? His innate instinctive knowledge, of course. The salmon, innately and instinctively, know to swim upstream at spawning time. The homing pigeon innately and instinctively knows where home is. Nature has infused the monarch butterfly with a similar innate and instinctive sense of direction. In the fall, hundreds of thousands of those beautiful butterflies migrate south. They gather on tree trunks and large branches to hibernate, although they've never been to those glens before. They leave in the spring, never to return. They wing their way north to lay their eggs and pass on. Their offspring are born with that same inner programming that directs them to show up at the exact same glen the next year. Where is that, Rich?
Monterey.
Well, it's in Mexico, the biggest place.
The biggest place is, but Monterey,
Goleta has a place.
Goleta, yeah. It's pretty amazing how they know where to go. So don't you think that that same innate and instinctive guidance system is encoded in our true nature as well? Do you think that you are less equipped than the Australian brush turkey, the salmon, the homing pigeon, the monarch butterfly, just to name a few? I think not. GE's Director of Research, G.C. Soot, once said, after preparing yourself in your chosen field, you must be alert to hunches and keep an open mind. Do not rely too much upon logic. Try to locate the treasure chest of ideas which lies hidden within you. Intuition is readily available to all of us. It is a divinely natural faculty within every person, and lucky people, quotations, know that. Unlucky people are who Jesus was talking about when he said, you have eyes and see not. Ye have ears and hear not. So get lucky by listening to your intuition. Number 3, lucky people expect good fortune. Let's expect the best part. We don't always get what we desire, but we always get what we expect. Interesting quote. Our deep down expectations, those are the ones that we bet our life on. Remember the story I told you a while back about a small town that had been historically dry, but then the local businessman decided to build a tavern? And the congregation, remember the story? The congregation from the local church was concerned and planned an all-night prayer vigil to ask God to intervene. And shortly thereafter, lightning struck and it burned the bar down to the ground. And the owner of the bar sued the church, claiming that the prayers of the congregation were responsible, and the church hired a lawyer to argue in court that it certainly was not responsible. After the initial review of the case, the presiding judge, a man wiser than most, stated, no matter how this case comes out, one thing is obvious. When asked what that was, the judge said, "It is evident that the tavern owner believes in prayer and the churchgoers do not." Interesting. So my question is, what did the churchgoers really expect? What did they really expect? What do you really expect when you do an affirmative prayer? What do you really expect? Lucky people expect their good to come to them, and it does. New Thought author Eric Butterworth wrote, "You do not receive what you want or even what you pray for. You receive what you expect." Have you ever wondered in your life what your life would be like if everything you tried or reached for turned into the fulfillment of your expectations? It would be a little different from the way it is now, since most of us expect so little. Most of us go through life holding a small tin cup under the Niagara Falls of God's plenty. This manifests as a string-saving, make-do, can't-afford-it consciousness. It's a marginal living at best. We prepare for problems and are rarely disappointed. We are in tune with the indefinite instead of the infinite. We are practicing the absence instead of the presence of God. That's Eric Butterworth. That's a fabulous book, by the way, Spiritual Economics. He's just an amazing writer. So anybody here ever watch Hee Haw? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I grew up watching Hee Haw. And the song that was titled Gloom, Despair, and Agony on Me, that was we loved to sing that song, yeah. If it weren't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. You know, that's just, you just listen to them singing, you look at them and you go, that's so true. If you focus on lack, you will attract more lack, because whatever it is we focus on, that is what we attract. Positive or negative, whatever you emphasize in consciousness, always expands. You can't circumvent this principle. It's not possible, because it works with mathematical precision. If you focus on lack 98% of the time by worrying and fretting, then try to connect the situation with a few, or correct the situation with a few affirmations, you will reap accordingly. Your life will still be 98% lacking. The Apostle Paul said, "And my God shall supply every need of yours according to his riches and glory." This is the law. The universal system is constantly providing for your needs from the inexhaustible resource. As Emerson says, man is an inlet and may become an outlet for all there is in God. I like that. You know, we can be the inlet, but we can be the outlet for all there is in God. What a beautiful visualization. So change your mind and change your luck. Change your thinking, change your life. Finally, lucky people turn bad luck into good. Famous composer Rossini wrote an opera entitled The Barber of Seville, and it was a disaster. Hisses and boos followed the fall of the curtain. The prima donna was in hysterics. The leading man talked of suicide. When they looked for the composer and couldn't find him, they were all worried that he was gone off to destroy himself. They rushed to look for him, and they found him soundly sleeping at home. They woke him up and cried, "Maestro, are you all right?" And Rossini replied, "I was having a nice sleep before you woke me." They said, "But the opera, it was a fiasco." Rossini replied, "Evidently, the barber's not good enough, so I must compose something better. That is all. We will discuss this in the morning. Please let me sleep." As everyone knows, the barber turned out to be an immense success and has played steadily for over 100 years. This story is a perfect example of how we should meet seemingly failure and difficulty in order to turn it into success. Always look for that silver lining. Within what appears to be bad or wrong, there is undoubtedly a blessing. Put your attention on that. Emma Curtis Hopkins' demand of the universe, and this is something I want to write on the wall. This too is good. This too is God. This too is for me, and I demand to see the blessing in it. I love that. When something comes up, I love that. And that last bit, that last part, I demand to see the blessing in it. It has to be said with some attitude. I think it's time for a really old joke now. Are you ready for this? Okay. Once there were twins whose only resemblance to each other was their looks. If one felt it was too hot, the other thought it was too cold. If one thought the TV was too loud, the other claimed the volume needed to be turned down. Opposite in every way, one was the eternal optimist and the other a doom and gloom pessimist. Just to see what would happen on the twins' birthday, their father loaded the pessimist room with every imaginable toy and game possible. The optimist room, he loaded with horse manure. That night, the father passed by the pessimist room and found him sitting amid his new gifts, crying bitterly. "Why are you crying?" the father said. "Because my friends will be jealous. I'll have to read all these instructions before I can do anything with this stuff, and I'm going to constantly need new batteries. And eventually, all these toys will be broken." Passing the optimist room, the father found that twin dancing with joy in the pile of manure, and he asked, "Why are you so happy? What's there to be happy about?" And the optimist twin replied, "Well, with all this horse poop, there's got to be a pony in here somewhere." Find the good, find the blessing, find that pony in every situation. Or baby goat, whatever you want. So you see, luck really has nothing to do with it. It isn't where we are, but who we are that really makes the difference. We make our own luck. When we align with a real unity with spirit that is already perfect and complete. And we do this by maximizing the use of what we already have. We do this by listening to our intuition. We do this by expecting the best wherever we are, wherever we're going. And we do this by seeing and calling forth the good in every situation, by demanding to see the good in every situation. Where are you this morning with all of these? Which one of them could be enhanced just a little bit today? With these attitudes aligned with spirit, how could we feel anything but lucky, right? And so it is.